Hello and welcome to a pro basketball show with me, Andrew Willett. We're in the midst of WNBA coverage and excited to bring our content to you. You can catch a pro basketball show on streaming services such as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify with live broadcasts on playback. Make sure to follow us at APBShow on social media platforms such as Twitter and Instagram, with more coming soon. Without further ado, a pro basketball show. Hello and welcome to a pro basketball show. The WNBA's opening weekend has come and gone, and boy, I think it was a really good one. 9 regular season games in the books, and we have some fun storylines to follow, a lot of takeaways that probably mean absolutely nothing after 1 or 2 games into the season. But today, we're going to talk about some of the contenders and how they did in the opening weekend slate. And to do so, I brought in, and I am very happy to welcome in, a writer and comedian for CBC Comedy, Yahoo Sports Canada, Winsider, and Swish Appeal, while also working as the editor-in-chief over at Raptors HQ, Chelsea Leite. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
Perfect. Thank you. I'm great. How are you?
Very good. You know what? I think it was just a really fun weekend. I watched a lot of basketball, and overall I think it was a huge success. What about you this weekend?
Yeah, it was a lot of basketball, just a lot of really great storylines, a lot of great performances from, places we expected, places we didn't. So yeah, it was fun, and it's nice to have the WNBA back.
Couldn't agree more, and I'm excited to see where a lot of these teams go from here. But before that, I want to acknowledge kind of where we were before the season got going. What were your, I guess, starting with contenders, I want to talk tiers. Like, obviously, everybody had New York and Las Vegas in that top tier. Where did you see the 12 teams fitting in from there? I know for me personally, I had Washington right up there, but I also really like Connecticut, and that looked good this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There definitely is that top tier of Seattle, or not Seattle. I always think Brianna Stewart is still in Seattle, New York, and Las Vegas. And you're right. Washington is right up there as well. I personally will put Connecticut not maybe on the same tier as Washington, maybe more in the middle. But yeah, and then there's sort of kind of like the middle crew. And then, yeah, a couple performances that or teams that you don't know whether they're going to be able to put it together or not. But yeah, overall, it was a good weekend. I don't think we had any like big shocks. Maybe today the Connecticut Mystics game was maybe the closest thing to like the big shock of the weekend. But yeah, it was good, and excited to see like. I think Chicago surprised me too by going 2-0, which is great for them. And really enjoyed having them up here a couple weeks ago. So it was fun. And so excited to see how they kind of, roll out this season.
Agreed. And you mentioned the Connecticut Washington game. I think Washington should be on a higher tier. I think Connecticut's I guess the word I'm looking for, determination, their discipline in order to just kind of muck up a game and play tough. It really puts them into that tier, in my opinion, and they showed it off against Washington today.
Yeah.
And Alyssa Thomas, just I can't. Obviously, the shot isn't there, but so much fun to watch, in my opinion, just defensively, and the way Connecticut turned that into offense. We'll talk a lot about them. But this weekend, a lot of fun. 4 games on Friday, 2 Saturday, and then 3 more here today. And I think today, like, we had a lot of great storyline after great storyline after great storyline in those 3 games. What for you? What were kind of some of those big storylines heading into the weekend that you thought were going to be the main talking points for this WNBA season?
Yeah, I mean, the first and probably most important one is the fact that BG is back, and it was really enjoyable to see her return to the court. It was kind of, I think, a whole league-wide, community-wide win for all of us to see her come back, and the response that she got and the way that she played. Unfortunately, Phoenix is 0-2 right now after today, but to be able to see her have a very dominant performance in both games, to see her back on the court, happy, healthy, get a good response was probably the big main storyline. And then after that, definitely how the two super teams were going to come out of the gate. And then just, those couple of players that, are always going to perform well, people coming back from injuries. And then there's as well the teams that went through a lot of change during the offseason. Maybe the biggest free agency of the WNBA so far. And so to see how those rosters kind of shake out is very interesting.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think one point there that obviously a lot of good storylines, but when I watched the Washington Mystics New York Liberty game, it was like, okay, one of these teams has been put together for a little while. They
Mm-hmm.
know how to play with each other. New York, like you said, one of the biggest free agencies. That means a lot of moving parts, a lot of new pieces. And they didn't seem to be on the same tier there. But Washington, I think, had a good weekend. Connecticut as well. Chicago, like you mentioned, that was on my list here of like they really surprised me. I expected them to come out and compete. I guess maybe the competition hasn't been the stiffest for Chicago, but I mean to come out 2-0, I mean that's a good start to the season. And then, like you said, Brittany Griner, it's just awesome that I think the presentation that Phoenix had today, or Sunday for their home opener, was lovely. It was emotional. And to see, like you said, Brittany Griner to play how she has played, even after all of that, 27-10 today against
Yep.
Chicago,
Yep.
otherworldly, and
Yeah.
just really cool that she's back.
Yeah, for sure.
And then one thing for me this weekend that just like jumped out to me, the Los Angeles Sparks looked really good in
Yeah.
their season opener. And for me, I've had my 12 season previews for all 12 teams. I have also had my preseason predictions podcast, and so I can't hide it, but I had Los Angeles near the bottom of the league
Yep.
in my preseason expectations, and it from watching them one game in, I don't think they're going to be in that category.
No, no, yeah, it was exciting to watch them. I think people maybe were a little bit had some questions about the roster, maybe, but when you actually take a look at each individual on that roster, there's a lot of really like heavy performers on there and people who have a lot of experience and people who can shoot. So they're going to be a really fun team to watch this year.
I think that was a big difference with just having a big on the opposite side that could shoot.
Hmm.
Every time they'd run a pick and roll on one side, and then it didn't matter who the other bid on the floor was because they
Hmm.
have a lot of capable bids, but they can all shoot. Janae knocked down a three or two that I saw. Dearica Hamby, how about her performance coming back after
Yeah,
seven weeks after having her child? Just
wild.
amazing.
Yeah,
And
that was probably one of the highlights for me, like to come back that soon after having a kid and just like be able to actually like contribute to the game and it's just wild. Like I can't even imagine. So yeah, props to her.
and they don't even have Azure Stevens back yet either.
Exactly.
So I'm super high on what Azure does, and I think she hopefully will bring a lot to the LA Sparks team. But that's one of the teams that kind of changed for me in just one game in one short weekend. What things uh how do you have to adjust your expectations after one short weekend?
Yeah, I think LA was definitely a team that rose for me in terms of standings. A little worried about Phoenix. I do still think they're missing an important piece. They don't have Skylar Diggins Smith, who is a huge part of their offense, and you can tell in their gameplay that they need someone who is at her level, who is going to come and give 20, 30 points a night like she does, who's going to shoot like she does, who is that offensive presence like she is. And so, I mean, Brittany Griner's been doing great, but she can't do it alone. And I don't know if there's anybody on that roster as of right now who can control the offense in the way that Skylar Diggins Smith does for them. So that is something to think about for sure. And obviously, they haven't really said much about Skylar Diggins Smith's return or if she plans on returning or if, she's going to stay on the team. So I do think they need to address that problem. And then, yeah, just I think if you weren't sold on Washington this before this weekend, I think you probably are now.
I agree, and I'm a little biased. I wrote for Monumental Sports and Entertainment last summer,
Hmm.
just a blog about the Mystics, and so that team I just feel a little connection to.
Hmm.
And boy, to watch Shakira Austin play how she did in today's game against Connecticut,
Hmm.
a career high 21 points, I think 10 for 14 from the field.
Yep.
She was awesome.
Yeah,
Man, I
she was
think
great.
that Mystics team, I think with all of the pieces together,
Hmm.
once they really get rolling, they are going to be on that top tier. We'll talk about that here in a
For
moment.
sure.
But yeah, I agree with the Sparks. Surprised me a little bit. The Fever, not quite as good as I expected, although I think it's just still very early. They're very young.
Yeah.
I don't think they will be as good as I hoped that they would
Yeah.
be.
Couple of hard opponents though. You play Connecticut and New York with those rosters and a lot of experienced players. It's hard. Um, yeah, and I think I'm not seeing as much Aaliyah Boston dominance as I would like. Not on her part. Like I do think they need to run their offense through her a little bit more. But she's doing great, and I do think there are a lot of positives to that team that I hope get showcased throughout the season.
That's a great point about who they've played so far because Connecticut and New York are two very tough opponents.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I could see that hopefully turning around. I had them just outside the playoffs, not a playoff team or anything, but
Yeah.
still a little worse out of the gates. It doesn't help when you run into Brianna Stewart having the game that she had.
Yeah.
Speaking of highlights this weekend, a
Hmm.
45 point out in just three quarters of action. Well, she
Yeah.
had that before she even played in the fourth quarter, but she
Yeah.
was incredible. The Fever, like they maybe they could have been in this game if Bree Stewart doesn't have the avalanche start that she had.
Yeah. Wild. And I mean, the thing with her, I've watched her very closely for a few years. She's definitely my favorite player in the league, but she just has the power to control a basketball game. And she has the power to operate at any spot in the court, whether that's offense, defense, facilitating, shooting, down, by the rim, anything. She can assist. She can be on any end of a pick and roll. Like she's just incredible. And as soon as she kind of gets hot, she's the type of player that can score again, like we saw today, 45 points. So yeah, definitely not a one-time occurrence for her for sure, but definitely great. The storyline was there. It was her first home opener with her new team in her home state. And then she gets a franchise record and a career high. So yeah, great for her to see and just she's in her prime and we're just lucky we get to watch it.
That's a great way to phrase it. And like you said, the franchise record, the career high. The remarkable thing to me, it took two games for her, and then she did it with 2 minutes and 13 seconds left in the third quarter to break the
Yep.
record like that. Just awesome stuff from Brianna Stewart, and like you said, lucky to watch her. We'll
Yeah.
talk about a few more of these surprises that I had through the weekend, but I want to get into those contenders,
Mhm.
and we're gonna start here with New York. Did you expect them to have that slow start before coming out and just crushing Indiana with Bree Stewart's performance? And what stood out to you?
I wouldn't say I expected it, but it didn't surprise me. I've been following Liberty training camp pretty closely, and the starters didn't play together until last Wednesday, and then they played on Friday, right? So they are still waiting for pieces to come back. They still are trying to find chemistry. And then you think about the Washington Mystics, who their core hasn't really changed in this transition free agency, all of this stuff. They're like couple of their main pieces are still there, and so they didn't really have to catch up the way that New York probably has had to in the past couple of weeks. And you think about New York, it's like an entirely new team learning a new system, learning a different way of playing basketball. Their number one option from last year is now like their number two, number three option. So they're changing the way that they play. And so it wasn't really surprising to me that it got off to a slow start on Friday. And I do think, I mean, today people will say it was against Indiana, it was this or that. But I do think as the weeks go on and they, get all their pieces and figure out who's who and who's playing, yeah, this is definitely, you'll see them finally put the pieces together and they'll continue to have games like they did today. So
So I felt the same way as I mentioned off the top. It was just clear that one team had been put together for a while. One team still trying to figure some things out.
Mhm.
What adjustments do you expect to see as I mean, like there were some turnovers late in the Fever game that
Mhm.
I watched. Same with like Washington's defense was just all over New York and transition, both offense and defense was not great for the New York Liberty. But what adjustments do you expect to see from the Liberty?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of getting everybody back and getting everybody conditioned. Courtney Vandersloot is still coming off of a injury. She barely participated in training camp because she got a concussion. Jonquel Jones is coming back from a pretty serious injury. Then they're having Maureen Johannes come back from France probably next week. So she's going to have to get acclimated and conditioned to be back with the team. You have people learning new systems. You have people coming from overseas play. You have young people coming back from injury, like Sabley, who is going to be a big part of this team, who is still trying to recover and get conditioned and fully back. And so, yeah, once they get all of everybody kind of caught up and on the same speed, their injuries go down, their people come back. I think it's just a matter of like making sure that core plays together a little bit before they really build the chemistry. And so now that the starters are back, I think it'll be great to see how they continue to develop over the next couple of weeks now that they have more time to play and practice together.
I think that's a really level-headed and good way to think about how New York opened the year. I that's why I kind of leaned away from them and some of the awards. I thought Las Vegas would be a little bit more seamless with their super team switch because it was just one move for Las Vegas as well as Alicia Clark off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
As I just let's transition over to them
Yeah.
because they played just one game
Yeah.
and oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, they just did not disappoint. Maybe
No.
early on it was close with Seattle, but a 105 to 64 win over the Seattle Storm in the
Yeah.
Storm's first game without Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart.
Yeah.
What takeaways, if any, did you have from that blowout?
I mean, it wasn't surprising, and you're right. The Vegas didn't really make any moves, and the ones that they did were big, shocking moves, like big, getting more players, getting more, experience, getting like one of the best players in the league. And so yeah, they're just gonna get better, which is nuts to think about because they scored 104 points or 105 points. Um, but yeah, they're just next level. They're so good. The talent is there. The chemistry is there because they all play together. And even Candace Parker coming in, used to play with Chelsea Gray, is just like can do anything because she's amazing. And yeah, they're just like a fun team. And I do think that they have like a sense of ease a little bit that helps them. They have confidence. Which is great. You need confidence and something Brianna Stewart was talking about today as well. So knowing that they have that and they have already like they won the championship, right? So they're coming off. It's not like last year where they had something to prove. I think it's this year they're more just, continuing to prove what they've already proven, having fun, playing really elite basketball, and just being all stars like they are. So it'll be interesting to see how long they go undefeated. And very interesting to see once they start matching up with teams like Washington and New York, what kind of how it falls.
Yeah, it's tough to take much away from a game that was 41 points at
Yeah.
the end.
Yep.
But did you discern any weaknesses at all from this team? Like, do you think there's any question marks around this team right now?
I mean, it really just depends on the players. If they can stay healthy, that's another a big thing. Um, that's always something that you never know when it's going to happen, and you never want players to have to suffer through injury. So, very much hoping that they can stay healthy. And just it's a long season. It's longer, like 40 games now, so they have more to play. So hoping that they can just like sustain that energy throughout the entire season. And then just, I mean, when you think of each player, they're all human. They're gonna have bad nights. They're gonna, have games that maybe they don't perform as well as others. But I think what Vegas has is a lot of depth. And if, on a night where, say, maybe like Candace Parker isn't having a big night, you still have like four other all-stars on that starting lineup that are going to just like come in and do whatever. So, not too many concerns for them. I think the biggest thing is just making sure they stay healthy.
Yeah, obviously, I think depth has been a concern for the last couple of seasons for this Aces squad, and I think as long as you, like you said, injuries don't occur, I think they're going to be just fine. Like you said, if one All-Star isn't having the night, the four others will likely be able to pick it up just fine.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, New York, Las Vegas. I still have Las Vegas, and so far this year they are just a step above New York.
Mm-hmm.
But they are in that top tier. Up next, we both agree in Washington. But before we touch on them, I'm gonna go to Connecticut at 2-0 so far this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you lose a player like Jonquel Jones, and that's not a good look at all. But I think I really liked the pieces that they brought back. I was really high on this team's offseason. Did you think they were able to properly reload after a finals trip last year?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Connecticut is that they have had such high expectations the past like 3 or 4 seasons, and unfortunately, it hasn't really worked out for them. A coaching change is always going to shake things up a lot. Losing your star player is going to shake things up a lot. But you're right. I do think they retained, some great players. They moved things around, brought players back into the organization. So yeah, when you think about it, they lost Jonquel Jones, but you still have Alyssa Thomas, you still have Brianna Jones, all this stuff. So they're still a very talented team, and I don't think they're in that like upper top three team with Washington, New York, and Las Vegas. But I do think they're going to hang around and win some games, and you never know. They may catch one of those top teams. Like today, they caught the Mystics, and you never know. Maybe they'll catch Vegas or New York on an off day, but they're definitely still a threat. And they impressed me. I think I was a little bit concerned when they lost Jonquel Jones, like everybody else was, but I think this weekend convinced me that like they're probably all right.
I think a really underrated move in that offseason was the acquisition of Tiffany Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
And having watched both of Connecticut's games, really, really big impact out there
Mm-hmm.
so far this season. I think Rebecca Allen was
Yeah.
a massive pickup, especially, and I think very specifically to this team because of their lack of shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that she can bring that shooting also with some length and kind of uh, the thing for Connecticut, what I saw today was that there's kind of a vision here where they get up and moving with Alyssa Thomas just running the show. And then
Mm-hmm.
they have all of that length on defense
Mm-hmm.
because their guards are also pretty tall. And like you said, they go and they still have all of that talent even after losing Jonquel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty impressed with kind of that style of play because they really the way that they were down early, down 12 in that game
Yeah.
against Washington, and they get out and they ran. Early on, Washington's transition defense was fantastic. That
Mm-hmm.
fell off as soon as Alyssa Thomas started grabbing some rebounds and just pushing
Yeah.
because they got out and going. Did you
Yeah, for
have did you have any concerns, or do you have any more concerns for Washington as they sit at 2-0, but like you said, not necessarily up in that stratosphere for you? What are your concerns?
for Connecticut.
Yes.
Yeah, I think again, just the health thing. I know a couple of their players have struggled with injury over the past couple of years, and again, it's a long season. You have to make sure you stay healthy for all of it. And I think for them, maybe making sure that they have good depth. I mean, I like a lot of the moves that they've made. I like the fact that they signed Dejanay Carrington to an extension. I've really enjoyed watching her over the past couple of years. So yeah, just making sure that their players stay healthy to make sure that they're winning these games against teams like Indiana, like teams. I'll be interested to see how they go up against, say, like Chicago or LA or one of those teams that we kind of have in the middle. tier because those are games that they're really going to have to win, especially if you think about the fact they'll probably lose, a couple against New York, Vegas, maybe the next time they meet up with Washington. So it's really about for them, like making sure they win their matchups and staying healthy and, keeping up in the tier that we're putting them in right now.
And then lastly, in kind of that tier, Washington. I want to touch on them because I think the Brittany Sykes move was a fantastic move, especially if you're losing Alicia Clark. And then they kind of just settled in with a couple of bench pieces here and there. Amanda Zoe B, I've been a fan of since she was in LA. Christy Tolliver adds a shooting component off the bench that's really impressive.
Yep.
Among other things, I think this Washington team has a chance to be really, really good. How good do you think this team can be?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Washington that I really noticed this weekend is depth. Shakira Austin has improved so much over the offseason. She went to Israel and was like the MVP of the Israel like basketball league. Excuse me. And so I'm so impressed with her. Natasha Cloud is incredible. You have Elena Deladon, which like is automatically going to make you a fantastic team. And then, yeah, the little pieces that they put in, Brittany Sykes, bringing back Christy Tolliver, like all of this stuff is incredible. And I think what they have that maybe some other teams don't have is like a lot of experience. A lot of these players on this team have a lot of experience, but are still playing really competitively, lots of minutes. And so their depth is really, really scary and for other teams, enjoyable for us to watch. But and I think if again they can stay healthy and you can get a full season with no minutes restrictions from Elena, then it's going to be really great for them.
And she's been like masterful as always on the offensive side. The thing I've noticed from EDD has been the defense so far on Brianna Stewart and Alyssa Thomas, although Alyssa Thomas did it going late in today's game. But I think might have been the best defender from opening weekend for this Washington team. And that's saying a lot for a
Yeah.
team with Natasha Cloud, Ariel Atkins, Brittany Sykes, a new
Yeah.
addition, and Shakira Austin playing really well.
I know. Like the thing with Washington is that they have so much depth that you're naming all these players and then you forget like Ariel Atkins is on that team and Chrissy Tolliver is on that team. And so yeah, it's just again, they have so much depth that it's very good for them. Because again, once you get into the season, people are inevitably gonna have to miss games for this reason or that reason. So being able to fall back on those players that are again really seasoned and know how to stay ready for when their name is called, I think will really benefit Washington.
Agreed. So I guess as we kind of see them as third, what's keeping them out of that top 1, 2 tier in the WNBA? What concerns do you have about this team?
I think the biggest concern again is health. I feel like I'm like saying this over and over, but it's really a problem these days in the league is being able to keep your body at 100 the whole time, especially because a lot of these players play all year. So just maintenance of that. But I think what keeps them out of that 1 and 2 tier that New York and Las Vegas are in is just the fact that both Vegas and New York have like 3, 4 all-star caliber players. You have players who have been multiple players on the team that have been MVPs. You have multiple Olympic gold medalists, multiple national championships. They have like, 3 or 4 each. And Washington has like a couple, they have Elena Deladon, who is obviously the number one option. And then, you have other people who have been all-stars and Olympic champions and stuff like that. But they don't have that like 3 to 4 starters who all have been all stars, who all have been Olympic champions, who all have been national champions, who all have all of those like, accolades to them, all of that experience, all of that superstar power. They're calling them super teams for a reason because their entire team is made up of superstars. So I just think what makes them different than say like Washington is the fact that again, like you have all of those number one, like each of those players could be a number one option on any team. And then you put them all together, right? Whereas Washington has their number one option. And then, everybody else is doing their role, obviously, but not in the same way.
So that's interesting because I guess I'm gonna try and break this down for Washington because it's Elena Deladon obviously is still that top tier, and like you said, coming off of keeping her healthy, very important. but
Mhm.
she is coming into the season at full health, hopefully.
Yep.
But then Ariel Atkins,
Yep.
all-star the last couple of seasons. I
Mhm.
think Natasha Cloud is on that fringe, but not maybe not quite there.
It's on the fringe, yeah, for sure.
I think Shakira Austin is kind of a huge component to how good this team can be.
Yeah.
And because, like you said, those other teams have 3 to 4 to 5 all-stars in that starting lineup.
Yep.
If Shakira Austin can, and it's a lot to be asking a second-year pro to do this. So
Yeah.
I think like you must rely on depth a little bit more than
Yep.
relying on, hey, Shakira Austin has to step into her all-star potential in year two. But
Mhm.
we saw that today. She was really, really impressive.
Yeah.
But I, because I opened that first when they got up by 12 early on, I was like, this team might be able to sneak into a finals
Yeah.
as the 3 seed heading in behind New York and Las Vegas. They could beat one of those teams to get to the
Yeah.
finals. I think it'll be interesting to see how they grow as the season goes along. I was a little concerned. I think offensive rebounding has been a problem so far, allowing offensive rebounds.
Mhm.
And then the other thing that I didn't love from Eric Tebow in his first year, second game, just playing one starter, whether it was Natasha Cloud or Brittany Sykes with 4 bench players. I think
Mhm.
that could be mixed up a little bit more. But obviously, like you said, have to keep this team healthy, space
Yeah.
out those minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are some of my things for Washington. Were there any other teams in this contender category that popped out to you in opening weekend, or do you think that top three, that top four is about where things are at?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see those like quote unquote sleeper teams come up. I'm excited to see Los Angeles. Everybody was kind of saying Chicago wasn't going to have a great season, but they have been playing great. So I'm excited to see how they kind of fit in as well. And then yeah, just seeing how these top four teams compete against each other will be really great and really interesting for when we get further down the season. You start actually coming into standings and matchups and stuff like that.
Yeah, you mentioned Chicago. They take down Minnesota, they take down Phoenix. I didn't expect great things. I still had them in my playoffs, but
Mm-hmm.
James Wade made it a key this year that they're going to compete. They aren't going to go for one of those draft picks after they lost all the talent they lost. Like you said, really good so far. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious what you think about Dallas so far this season. One game in, they take down Atlanta, who I was pretty high on heading into the season.
Yeah.
Do you think Dallas can jump up towards that upper echelon of teams, top half at least in the league?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm concerned with Dallas's injury status. I'm concerned that one of their best players isn't going to be in for the foreseeable future. I'm concerned that they don't have enough experience to maybe shape up against teams like Connecticut and Washington or even Chicago or LA, who their players are very experienced and will know what to do when it comes down to clutch time. But they also still have, Enrique, and they have a lot of really good young pieces who I hope develop really well over the season. So they're definitely intriguing. I'm not sure they can kind of make it in that top half, but I mean, I'm also willing to be proved wrong. So
Yeah, see, because coming into the season, I saw Atlanta as being in that top half. I could be completely wrong, but Dallas had a really good, strong first half,
mhm.
and Enrique played really well in that first half as well. So maybe this is the right formula for Dallas. One game in, we have a lot of basketball still to be played.
Yeah.
Speaking of opening weekend, though, are there any players that you want to shout out? Obviously, we've talked about Bree Stewart's 45, but
Yep.
anyone that you want to give props to start the season?
Oh man. Dana Evans played fantastic today. I really, really think that she's about to have a great, great season. And I'm really excited to see how she develops and how she takes that leap. Have followed her since she was drafted and have really loved how she's built a career for herself. And so, yeah, I was really pleased to see how she played today and really pleased to see that she is just getting better and better.
Ben Evans, definitely one that I had kind of in my
Mhm.
most improved player
Yeah.
conversation heading into the season. I think I put her at third, but definitely could see her and stepping in for an injured Marina Mabry. Hopefully that she's all right. But yeah, Bruce Stewart, Dana Evans. Again, Ellis Thomas stood out to me. Connecticut,
Yep.
2-0 to start the year. but the way that she can just grab a rebound and push, leading the league now in rebounds through 2 games, just
Yeah.
above Asia Wilson. Really impressed with that Connecticut big three. Jackie Young had another big game, had a big game in her, and I thought that could be something that we see this season because Candace Parker came to Chicago and Talia Topper really popped off, and I think having so much talent around Jackie Young is just going to create more driving room for her, and I think she went out and had 22, 23 points in the season opener. Really impressive.
She's great.
But yeah, I really, really fun opening weekend, and I think we like where we're at in terms of contenders. Excited to see how things go. Any takes you want to get out as the 2023 season is underway now?
Oh man, I think just like keep supporting and keep pushing, keep watching the games, keep going to them if you're in market, if you're lucky enough to be in a market. Yeah, and just keep supporting these players because I think we're at a really big turning point in the league, and I'm excited to see how this season plays out and how what we can do to grow the game in the future. So just very much in a time where people need to be watching and supporting and yeah, these players, this league, the game in general.
Yeah, we're almost to that point in the summer where guys start tweeting out just, hey, we're almost done with sports for the summer, and I every part of me wants to just go like comment with a link to League Pass. But excited to watch how this season goes. I agree. No support. Had a lot of fun, and really, Chelsea, thank you so much for joining me on a pro basketball show.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into a pro basketball show. You can catch a pro basketball show on streaming services such as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify with live broadcasts on playback. Make sure to follow us at APBShow on social media platforms such as Twitter and Instagram, with more coming soon. Until next time, I'm Andrew Willett. Thank you for tuning in.